Alright, so this problem wants us to look at ticket sales and determine whether or not it's worthwhile to bring Taylor Swift to the Jiffy Lube Pavilion in Northern Virginia. So the first thing we have to do is think about how can we go about creating our system that will allow us to actually solve this problem. So first thing I would do is actually come up with what are the variables in this problem. And in this problem we're dealing with both pavilion seats, how many pavilion seats we have, and how many lawn seats we have. So I would go through and just call X the number of lawn seats and Y the number of pavilion seats. You could use different letters, variables. You could swap the way, it doesn't matter, that's your choice. I'm just doing this for my setup so I can create my system of inequalities. So what do I know? I know that the number of pavilion seats cannot go over 10,000. But more importantly, I also have to remember that since I'm doing a system that I can't go below 0 and I can't go greater than 10,000. And a lot of times students will assume the 0 part but not actually write in. It's important to write that in. Now they also tell me that the overall capacity is limited to 25,000 seats. So same thing with X. There's no limitation. I know I can't go under 0 for X, but there's no restriction, so I can go all the way up to 25,000 if I had no Y, if I had no pavilion seats sold. But I also know that in reality what's going to happen is that the number of lawn seats plus the number of pavilion seats will really be what's below the 25,000. So it's kind of an important thing to recognize. Now there's one last piece. I have to make more than $1 million with my sales. So I know that as I'm going with this, that I want to be looking at $150 for each ticket in the pavilion, plus $40 for each ticket in the lawn, has to be greater than or equal to $1 million. So here I have my system that I'm going to use to help me make sure that I'm meeting the expectations for sales. So from here, the next question then was to graph the actual system. So I'm going to go over to Desmos and graph there. Now if I look, I'm going to put up here, I've got my inequalities from my previous problem. I knew that I had 0 is less than or equal to Y is less than or equal to 10,000. And then I had that 0 is less than or equal to X is less than or equal to 25,000. And I knew that my X plus my Y had to be less than or equal to 25,000 as well. And of course it has to be greater than 0, but the greater than 0 technically gets taken care of by here, these two being my boundaries. And the last thing was that I know that for 150 Y plus 40X has to be greater than or equal to 1 million. And if you notice there, I had to leave out the commas. If I try to put commas, it does not like that in this system. So then the question is, now that I've graphed it, where is it that I actually have a region that satisfies these conditions? And I have to think about where are all 4 colors. And if I'm having trouble seeing a color, what I can always do is I can change them by clicking that edit and then change it. So maybe this is just too bright. I'm going to go to green to make it a little bit easier to see the colors. And I could change anything else I wanted to, but I'll leave it at those. So I get 6 colors to start with. And I can see then, here's the parts. So now I have my system graphed, and if I want to be very specific, I can always click on those points. And for here, if I hover over, it tells me that's at 6,666 and 67 hundredths. Up here, this is at 0, 10,000. Over here, this is at 15,000, 10,000, and then this one's at 0 or 25,000, 0. So I know that's the vertices of my bounded region. So let's go back to the questions again. So the next question asked, choose a point that satisfies your system and explain what it means in the context. So now I'm going to go back to Desmos and try to find a point that would satisfy that location. So I want to be somewhere in this quadrilateral region. So I can actually use ordered pairs here. I know that anything in that region will work, so I know if I'm at 5,000, say I put like 1,000 in, I can see, oh, that's not high enough. I got to get farther up. So maybe I go up to 8,000. And now I can see that that point, I'm going to show the label, is right here. It exists inside that region. So what would that mean? That's then the better question. So I want to go back. So what that means is that I'd sell 5,000 lawn seats and 8,000 pavilion seats. So in the context of this problem, if I'm charging $150 for each pavilion and $40 for each lawn seat, that means I would make $1,400,000. Therefore, I am making at least $1 million expected to make this a worthwhile adventure. So then the question comes down to, would I recommend to bring Taylor Swift for a concert series? Why or why not? So if I'm looking at that, and I've already got something in the region that's over the $1 million, I can say, yes, I've satisfied all the restrictions. Therefore, I'm going to make money, and that's the whole purpose. I want to make money. So yes, bring them because I have a region that says that I can actually make money if I sell these tickets. And knowing that she's a hot artist right now for ticket sales, it means that I could probably even maximize even more than just make money. I could make a lot of money. So how much more is what we get to with question 5. What's the most money that can actually be made? So this is where I'd want to come back and look then again at my system. So let's go back over to Desmos and let's go back and look at those points, the vertices of my shaded region that satisfied all the conditions. I had 0, 10,000, I had 15,000, 10,000, and I had 25,000, 0. Now, yes, there is a fourth point here at the 0, 6,667, but if I think about the fact that I'm trying to maximize, I know that 10,000 is going to give me more than 6,666. So I'm going to ignore that point even though it technically does exist. But maximize my profit will always be found at the vertices. So I'm going to check those 3 vertices and see where I end up to maximize profit. So first one here is if I plug in the 10,000 for my pavilion and 0 for my lawn seat, I'd end up with $1,500,000. So I've gone over the million. I'm going to make a profit of $500,000. If I use 10,000 pavilion and 15,000 lawn, I'm now at 2.1 million. So I've made over $1 million extra, which is great. And then if I use the 25,000, I fall exactly at $1 million. So I'd break even, but it's not my maximum. So in this case, I'd say, well, what's the best I could do? The best I could do is sell out all of my pavilion seats and then sell the rest of my lawn seats until I've met full capacity. And that will give me my most money.